We've had the prize pools revealed, pre-sale early access cards are out there, and Sorare scouts and managers all over the world, whether they're starting out brand new, whether they've been round the block once or twice, are fine-tuning and honing in their strategies ahead of what should be the biggest season ever on Sorare. And in the video today, I'm going to be breaking down what my strategy is for Rare in the Champion region. The Champion region is the top 5 leagues across European football, and it is the epicenter of all the biggest prize pools that Sorare have, the best cards, the most money, and I'm pretty sure as the season rolls out, we're going to see the money can't buy, the once-in-a-lifetime experiences, never mind things like signed shirts and tickets and whatever, be quite firmly concentrated around the biggest and best leagues, clubs, players, everything else in world football. If you're brand new to Sorare and you haven't even opened up your account yet, there's a link in the description of this video. It'll be in the pinned comment as well. And if you open your account by clicking on that link, you get $50, euros, pounds of market credit, whatever your native currency is, once you've bought 5 limiteds from auctions or instant buy. But not only that, anyone who clicks on the link in my videos on my channel here will also be entered into a giveaway to win a signed Premier League jersey, shirt of your choice, subject to availability. So genuinely, if you are going to start playing Sorare today, the link in the description of this video is the best link you're going to find across the entire internet. Get into the comment section on this video button, let me know what is your strategy for Rare or Limited, depending on what you're after, Champion Euro. Are you going to be focusing on leagues? Are you going to stay in the main region? Are you avoiding it altogether? I'm looking forward to catching the comment section on this one, guys. At any point, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, as we cover not just Sorare and all the fantasy football glory that we have on the channel here, but all the stuff that happens in real world football, the transfer window, as well as what should be on the pitch, a massive 24-25 season. And yeah, let's just get stuck right into it. Now, before we get right stuck into it, right, the first thing I want to say on the video today is the reason I'm doing this strategy on an actual video for you guys to sit and hopefully enjoy, watch, laugh, learn, whatever happens, is because I do think this is a great example of a strategy for any Sorare manager, no matter really what league you're in, and the sort of progression you go through from building your club through collections, as well as player ID, players you actually like, as well as a lot of the other, joys, benefits that Sorare offers as a game mode. So it's really, I think it's not my best strategy. Like, I do think my Celtic collections will do a lot better. They'll outperform my champion stuff, but a lot of my champion cards are, cards I'm pretty attached to. I've got quite a solid enough strategy for what I've got here, as you'll see in the video today. But the main thing I want you to think about is, you might be ahead of where I'm at in this strategy in terms of the squad development. Maybe you're 2 steps behind, maybe you're 5 steps behind. But it's kind of realizing that the squad building, the strategy formation part of Sorare, everyone goes through the same system. But if you're watching my videos, Harry's, Sorare Data's, whoever it might be out there, everyone's just in a different stage on their journey, as it were. And like I say, I do feel that this example I've got for my Rare Champion one is a great kind of, halfway point. It's not a finished article. It's not a fully fledged strategy like my Celtic one, for example, that's firing on all cylinders and it's got all the bases covered. It's got some bases covered. It's got a lot of good bases covered, but there's still some holes, there's still some problems, and I probably can't think about winning every single game week. So yeah, just want that to be out there for the beginning of the video. Now, I did a few series on the channel for the beginning of last season and really in the middle of last season as well, really focusing in on how you should be building your Sorare club in my point of view, from how the market and the game has been developing, what things are Sorare really encouraging players to do, what is the benefit of doing these things, and is the benefit really worth, is the juice worth the squeeze, should you be doing this kind of thing. And feel free to check that out. I'll link that playlist at the end of this video if you want to check it out. It's mainly still relevant, but some of the examples are maybe a bit dated. But a lot of that stuff is centered around squad building, formations, head count, position cover, captain choices, that kind of thing. And I think, again, this is a great example of that sort of thing on the go. When you look at the goalkeepers that I've got locked and loaded ahead of next year, it's a lovely kind of sliding scale of quality of goalkeepers that any manager at Limited or at Rare will be dabbling in. And, no matter really what your budget, your first goalkeepers, ideally would be Alisson, Courtois, Neuer. I was going to say Ederson there, but maybe not him, but you get the vibe. That would be ideal if you could just go and get top of the food chain guys right off the bat, but sadly not a lot of us can do that. So I've got Jan Oblak, who is a nailed established number 1, should be in a top 3, top 2 maybe, depends on the season, top 1 maybe, club in his domestic league. And then I've got maybe Martin van der Voort in as a number one. I think he's going to make the move. He's a goalkeeper that's transferred from the Belgian league to the German league. There's some details around that we won't go into in this video today for why I'm fairly confident that Martin here is going to get the number one jersey at Leipzig. But that's maybe like a 70-30 call on that goalkeeper. Goalkeepers that aren't definite nailed-on starters tend to have their price suppressed against ones that will. So I can't completely hold Martin van der Voort in the same esteem as I currently hold Jan Oblak when I'm building and I'm fleshing my team out, which is why I've got someone like Nikola Vasilch here, who is the undoubted number one at St. Pauli. And because they've just been promoted from Bundesliga 2 to 1, a little bit unknown of an element of how well he could do in the Bundesliga 1. It's very unlikely that they'll go and replace him or anything like that. But an established number one, a guy who won't cost the earth as a goalkeeper, as far as a goalkeeper goes, but is very AA capable, will play all the time. And because there's no European football, none of this really comes into it with goalkeepers, but I don't need to worry about rotation and cups and all that kind of nonsense, you know. So, stated number one, hopefully like a middling team, but St. Pauli could be towards the bottom of the league, conceding a lot of goals, and maybe he's not terribly useful. Somewhat similar is Jasper Cillessen. Again, a guy that's transferred into the region, but this time it's an actual transfer. Las Palmas had one of the best goalkeepers in La Liga, especially on Sorare last season in Alex Valles. He looks to be on his way out to maybe Marseille. They've also sold their number two goalkeeper, and they signed Jasper Cillessen, who's also played in La Liga before. You might have remember for Valencia, like you can see on the card here, and previously before that, Barcelona. He's also a former Holland number one. So this is a guy that I've got a good degree of confidence. Like I know he's going to be the number one at Las Palmas, but I've got a good degree of confidence that he will score pretty well based on the goalkeeper they had last year and the pedigree that he brings. And because I've tried to be cute with this one, I've bought him as soon as the transfer news has developed. I've tried to get him at Dutch league prices rather than at La Liga pricing. So I'm looking here at having like 3.5 goalkeepers. Now, ideally, I've got 4, and then I've got a bit of selection. Maybe even I can splinter one of my teams into one of the league-specific competitions, because 2 of these keepers are Bundesliga and 2 of them are La Liga. So I've got a little bit of accidental synergy there where, you know, I'm lined up with some leagues that I could maybe roll into. And again, the price point for all 4 of these guys will vary. Van der Voort's under 23, which adds a bit of something onto him. And if Van der Voort does get the number one job at Leipzig, I've got 2 keepers that will play midweek football. Oblak, of course, with Atletico Madrid, and Van der Voort, who would be with Leipzig. Now, the goalkeepers have always been, in my mind, your entry ticket. Is what gets you a team onto the leaderboard, is what gets you a team submitted. The tournaments are all free to enter. The only thing you need to pay, as it were, to play Sorare is for buying the cards. There's no entry fees on the tournaments or anything like that. But the pricing of goalkeepers, even today, where they're quite affordable and quite reasonable, I've just always felt they're, you know, goalkeepers are just not fun to buy. I don't think any Sorare manager ever has fun buying goalkeepers, unless it's backup guys that are super cheap and maybe you know they're going to be number one, or you wait for them to become number one and then in hindsight you can enjoy the purchase that you've made or whatever. And for that reason, I really think it's important that everyone out there is kind of mindful of this, but you really do need to minimize the risk on your goalkeepers for not being a number one. You know, like really try and delve into the situation. Are they established number one? Does the manager like them? What do the fans think? If you can find that kind of thing on Twitter. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is you get your first goalkeeper, your second goalkeeper, whatever it might be, and, you know, the wheels fall off of it. They get dropped, they get bombed out, and they fall off the face of the earth, which it happens to goalkeepers, because goalkeeper is really a live by the sword, die by the sword sort of position, where you can be the guy that starts every game, and then all of a sudden a change of manager, a transfer, a bad couple of weeks, whatever, and you're gone. So security in goalkeepers. Pay the extra 20 quid, pay the extra 50 quid, whatever it is, but get goalkeepers that you can hang your hat on. You don't lose any sleep at night. You're not worried about transfer rumours to Saudi Arabia or incoming transfers if they're looking to upgrade or anything like that. Now, my cohort I've got of champion rare defenders probably paints quite an accurate picture, on my opinion, on defenders personally, in terms of building your team, working on a budget and having to, you know, make lemons out of lemonade and make decisions that are maybe a bit tougher in other areas. Because defenders, for me, there's a few guys that are absolutely meta, and in the champion region or even in any of the league specific competitions, having and not having them will be the difference for a lot of lineups, getting into the really good prizes or maybe even getting into the prizes at all. But for me, if you've got enough defenders, you follow the teams that they play for, you can get a good sense on when they're going to have a good match most of the time. Obviously, predicting the future is half of the battle here at Sorare, and no one is perfect at it. Sometimes you'll think a guy's going to have a good game, and they won't. That happens. But there's not that many defenders that consistently hit above 70. So I'm really a big advocate of having a big stable, a big cohort of defenders, as many of them as you could have, because they are very nominally priced. And if you can line the fixtures up, it's not a bad position to double up on if you've got the right fixtures going in your favour. Yerai is a guy that I won here, so maybe slightly ignore him versus the rest. But you will notice looking across these that I don't actually have that many different shirts in my defence. I've got a bunch of Leipzig guys, I've got a few Athletic guys, I've got a few Celtic guys in Champion with a few of the transfers that have happened. But not all these guys actually play for the teams anymore where they're actually at. So, like, I do think Andy Robertson, Guardiola, maybe Angelino come into the reckoning. You know, Frimpong, if he played a bit more, would come into this reckoning of, like, definite tier 1 and above defenders who can score the big scores that can really help a team get up to the top level. And then really, I've got 19 defenders listed here. So if we look at the other 14 of them, like, I only need to make 3 teams for Classic. I've got 4 goalkeepers, so I've got 4 teams I can reasonably field. And across 4 teams, like, Robbo for me, pretty fixture proof. Guardiola, if he's playing the same. Angelino and Frimpong, potentially the same, again, if you know they're playing or not. So I think I've got a good enough kind of spine there. And then I'm rolling the dice on Lenormand at Atletico Madrid, hitting the ground running, which I believe he will, as well as John Pacheco actually filling in his shoes at Real Sociedad, and he had a very promising set of scores last season. And then there's the likes of Joki Anderson, who'll play every game. Quatra, I expect to play even more this season, now that Milinkovic has been sold. I think I'm going to lose Savic out of this, but I think he's going to Fenerbahce, so we can maybe ignore him. But even all the Celtic guys, Julian, Juranovic, Jens, and Starfelt, like, in the Champion region, all 4 of them are 70 plus. The problem is, not all of them play all the time. Julian and Jens are a little bit more consistent, but again, they're very fixture volatile, you know. So my defence is definitely not rock solid. And based on the collections I've got, there's only maybe 1 or 2 guys that are candidates for me to bring in to my Classic collection right now as I speak to you. The number 1 would be, in this Atletico Madrid season, maybe a wee Kieran Trippier. I know he's getting old. There's not maybe as much utility in him in the future as going forward. But I'm very confident here. Even amongst some of the guys I've not even mentioned yet, like Hamari Traore and maybe Mukiele gets a transfer. Who knows what's going to happen with Tierney and Galan. Let's just, TBC on that one. But 4 teams, 5 teams, 6 teams, I should always have enough defenders that are going to be playing. And, I will be ranking them on a scale of how good they are every single week. And obviously the ones that have got the most questionable games and form and whatever will find themselves in my last teams. But I do think that there's definitely a lack of upper end quality that I've got here. But what I've clearly got is facilitator defenders, guys that will play, pull their weight, and, they can do the job of the big scoring players on occasion. Because your goalkeeper gets you into the tournament, your goalkeeper gets your team off the ground, and goalkeepers will get a clean sheet, not get a clean sheet, maybe they get some AA, maybe they don't. We're all playing the goalkeeper game. But defenders really aren't too far removed as being any different in reality, because they will get a lot of AA if they're a centre-back. If they're a full-back, they'll lose a lot of AA because they'll lose possession of some duels and whatever. But centre-backs and full-backs, they have enough positives, and in the right setting and in the right fixture, almost every dog can have their day if they're a starting player, a good player that you've seen and you know a little bit about, in a decent enough team, at least somebody that should be operating around the upper mid half of a table. But in midfield for me, it is very, very different. I'm very much a double midfield player. I love doubling up in midfields. I just think that midfielders, especially the profile of midfielder I gravitate towards, I love all action midfielders, guys that get tackles, interceptions, passes into the final third, goals and assists, of course. But guys that can play in midfield and be all things to all men and do everything that the team requires, just get way more opportunity to get that really big AA score. And if they can get that wee goal, get that wee assist, it can really put them over the top. And as I look at my midfield at the moment, I think I've got lots and lots of guys of that mould in that category. My main problem coming into this is thinking about 4 goalkeepers, 4 teams worth. The definite starters, the definite guys that I think, this season they could be a great card. They could be very valuable for me. They've got great utility. It's kind of low. Kang In Lee, Dani Olmo, the 3 Valencia guys at the bottom here. Goretzka probably falls into this, maybe even Mitoma. Who knows how good their season is going to be? Who knows how often they'll start? But all those guys have got the right kind of mix of what I'm after. The only guys I've got that, as I look at this right now, that I think are nailed on to be a really good player for me and be very useful, would be Saul Niguez, who's just moved to Seville, who don't play European football this year. So they're just going to go weekend to weekend. And a guy like this who's looking to get his career back up and running is the main orchestrator, the main playmaker in midfield. I think he's going to have a great year. Danny Parejo is in a very similar position, but way older, of course. And then we have Florian Wirtz. So we're really talking about like 3 nailed on guys. And I think Haidara could be decent enough for Leipzig, but he's not a team 1 kind of guy. And Leimer, I think, has got a better prospect of having a future at Bayern than maybe Goretzka does. So maybe Leimer could come into the fray. And there's a lot of guys here that I'm looking for transfers for, of course. Olmo, Kang, Soler, Guedes. Let's see what happens with them. But midfield, I've definitely got the right type of player in here, but I've just not got enough of them. And again, we'll come to the collections thing in a second, but there is a few guys, like four, that I would be hoping to pick up between now and pre-season, depending on how things go, to just really bolster the ranks and just make sure I've got guys that are decisive, capable, guys that will play most of the time, guys that maybe have some European football in their calendar as well. It gives me a little bit more flexibility. But what I'm not looking for is I'm not actively looking to bring in Carlos Soler types, Kevin Campbell types, etc. I've kind of got these guys and I've had them, and I'm in the situation that I find myself in. But it's these guys when they're in their pomp and they're playing every week. Like Nkunku, I think could have an amazing season at Chelsea this year if he's fit and available, and he could be a real difference maker. But again, that's something that is a bit TBC. So I'm a bit sketchy on midfield. I think I'll definitely have enough to have, like, my best team. I'll definitely have a good midfield. My second team, I should still have a midfield that works. And my third and fourth team, let's just see how some of these things shake out, you know. But again, if I don't need much, I don't need to go out and actually buy the 4 players I've got identified. I could probably just roll with this and just accept the failings when they come and take the success when they come with a little bit less liability. So again, somebody like Turientes, if I look at him, Zubimendi and Marino, who are 2 of the cards that I was just thinking about a minute ago, look to be moving out of Real Sociedad. And if he was to just walk into Zubimendi's job, like, he'll be a decent enough centre mid. I've watched this guy play, I've seen some of his scores, and if he was to be a regular starter in that controller position in midfield, then again, he's a guy that could just fall out the sky for me. But we're looking at 18 midfielders here, and really, how many of them are proper viable right now? Maybe like 6. But by the end of the transfer window, I'm hoping that gets up to like 10 or 12. And like I mentioned before, there's maybe 1 or 2 card buys still for me to do in midfield, just so that I feel a little bit more comfortable. And midfield is where I want people to be really selective. It's where I'm really selective, where I won't just bring any Tom, Dick or Harry into my midfield. I really love watching midfielders as a coach and as a Sorare player and as a football fan and all the rest of it. Midfield is just where my eyes go. And if there's a standout player in there, I really do try and I like to think I pick up on it anyway. But the forward category for me on Sorare is the most make or break, especially in the champion region, because if you look across the top 5 leagues in European football, how many strikers break 10 goals a season? How many strikers break 10 goals and assists combined per season? There's not that many, and even that metric is not that great that you could run all season long and have a lot of success with. So the bar of usability, of utility and forward is kind of high, but kind of low. It's a weird kind of situation. And I always feel really uncomfortable pre-season buying strikers unless there's some sort of active ingredient involved. Like they've made a transfer that I'm really high on. Like they've moved from a club they weren't playing to a club where maybe I know a bit about them, or I like the manager, the style of play I believe is going to suit them, that kind of thing. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to, you know, roll with the punches with the strikers I've got. Maybe I'll win a guy. Maybe I do buy somebody as time goes on. But strikers, I don't really tend to double up on. So I just need guys that start and will be in the reckoning for that 10 goal and assist combined minimum. That's kind of what I'm thinking about here for guys that will play for me in a Team 1 and a Team 2 selection. And when I look at my forwards for champion at the moment, it's the thinnest head count I've got. I've only got 10 of them. And out of these, how many of them are really viable? Well, we do think Moussa Diaby, you know, those links to Saudi aren't going away anytime soon. Ben Doak, we're not going to look at or think about just now. Memphis Depay's a free agent, and who knows where he really ends up. So outside of that, 3, we're only really looking at 7 guys that might be somewhat viable. Now, Take Kubo is a card I won last year, and Take is a guy, like, I'm a sucker for a wonder kid. You know, this guy was at La Masia, he was at Real Madrid. So many high hopes for this guy's career. And it has started to kick in this year when he was, you know, really playing every week, and Sociedad were doing really well in the league and playing Champions League. And, you know, he's a poor man's Leroy Sané, or maybe just another Leroy Sané, but in form, because Sané's kind of dropped off a little bit recently. But that's a guy that I just won, just fell into my lap, and it was like, brilliant. An in-form striker, I need a striker, it's really easy to hold on to him. But subsequently, what's then happened there around, as you've seen with some of the other positions, is I've got a lot of Sociedad cards now off the back of winning that one card. And I do think the best front three for Sociedad is Take, Oyarzabal, and Geraldo Becker on the left. So I've got those 3 guys when Sociedad plays. There could be one to a team. Maybe on that occasion, if they're playing bottom of the table or somebody rubbish, maybe I could go double forward. Oyarzabal takes penalties as well, which is lovely to know. And last year, also won a Luis Openda, who has had a lot of interest in transfer links at the beginning of the window, kind of die away after a bit of a mediocre Euros. But again, this is a guy that when he's playing, like, he's just as good as any other striker, really, when it comes to the champion region. Very decisive, capable, has AA in his locker as well. So that's a guy, again, along with Take, 2 examples of winning guys, tier 1s, tier 2s. Take was a tier 1, I think Openda was a tier 2. They can make a big difference to your gallery, and I'm kind of open to that with the striker category a lot more than I am for a midfielder and a defender. We do expect Cherky's going to move to Borussia Dortmund, and there'll be another Bundesliga forward we could look at. Sergio Camelo's in the last deal of his Rayo Vallecano contract, and I've kind of made a wee video saying Celtic should buy him right if they can't get Adamida. So let's see what Sergio Camelo does. But I'm kind of openly optimistic about Tati Castellanos, level 20 card, New York City. Again, the collection thing, all with Matoma, some of the Celtic guys. I'm getting a wee bit of cross-pollination here, but this is a guy that at Lazio last year, didn't really get much of a look in. Did get some starts, but didn't really get that productive. But if he can get back to the sort of form he had the season before when he was at Girona in La Liga, now being the number 1 striker at Lazio, Ciro Immobile is left for Besiktas. I think I've kind of looked into Castellanos here. 15% multiplier I've got on him. So with Castellanos, the 3 Sociedad guys, and even Openda, if I don't even think about anyone else at the moment, that's 5 forwards against 3 teams. So getting my 4 lineups out, as long as Sociedad are playing and they play the front 3 I think they should play, I've not got any problems. But it's very, very thin. It's very likely to be 1 striker per team. And if someone's injured, not got a game or whatever, then I'm going to really struggle to get competitive lineups out in here. But the number 1 thing for your forward cards is they have to be decisive capable. And right now, as I make this video and talk to you, we can hypothesize, we can look at squads, we can look at form and all the rest of it. But between now and the end of the transfer window, so strikers are the most transferred player in world football, you know, all the time. So I like to keep my powder dry. If a transfer happens now and you see it happening, you can jump on it similar to what I did with the goalkeepers, then I might do that. But otherwise, I'm quite happy to just kind of sit back and just see what I've got going on here. Let's see where Depay goes, and then can we win some firepower elsewhere? Because like I've alluded to a few times already, the collection bonus is something that I believe is going to really help my team out in a big way. Of course, I've got that Castellanos from this New York City collection, which means he's a 15% card. I've got some Celtic cards as well that have really big multipliers on them, as well as a few other ones round about the way. But if you actually look at the champion-based teams that I've got here, what's going on for my champion strategy that you've seen here, like I said in the intro, it's a very good example of anyone starting out, because I've got a very strong spine, a really obvious presence of Real Sociedad cards. And once I add on Merino, Brais Mendes, and Zubimendi as a minimum, there's maybe another 2 or 3 I might pick up just for shits and giggles at this point. I think a lot of Sorare managers are going to go into a region, are going to go into a competition with like a primary club that they're going to have a big collection of, where they like the defenders, they like the midfielders, there's enough forwards there that actually work, that can make them useful. But as we know, a 1-team stack isn't going to be enough to get you first, because if someone else has that and they've got a higher XP card, they've got a bigger collection bonus, you'll fall behind them in second. You do need a team that, like for me, like I'm looking at this and it's maybe like All Black in goals, maybe some sort of like Sociedad like spine, and then there's like an Nkunku, an Olmo, a Limer, a Goretzka, a Wirtz, something like that as a bit of a kicker to put the team over the top with another player that could be 80 plus capable in midfield, especially for me. And you can kind of see like 11 cards, let's say that gets to 15 in Sociedad, complemented by maybe a similar amount in another club. And again, I've done this over a few seasons on Sorare, so this is maybe something you can think about yourself doing. This season, I'll just focus on Sociedad, and then next season, I'll find a different club, and then that's how you're going to build your jigsaw puzzle together for your classic strategy. Because what I really enjoyed about this Leipzig team is very similar to what I've enjoyed with the Sociedad team, that it's just a very well-built squad. Not all these guys can play for Sociedad or Leipzig when they were, you know, back at their original team, which means a few of them will transfer. And if they transfer to different teams, then all of a sudden, a lot more of them can play. And if there's less of them fighting to play in the one team, you've then got more fixture coverage, and you've maybe even got more high scorers, because somebody else, Turientes, fills the void of Zubimendi, and then you've got 2 guys that can average 55 plus when you only had 1. And then when you couple that with some of these other collections that I've got that maybe you could do something similar with even in this coming season, or with the previous classic ones, where you look at this Valencia, I've also just picked up the Killison goalkeeper, but I just really liked all these midfielders. You know, Kang In Lee, Carlos Soler, Ferran Torres, Guedes, Parejo. I used to have Was as well, but now with the region change, I don't need them, so I sold them. And that's some midfielders, that's some fun. This Leon collection is a little bit different, because I've got Joki Anderson, I've got Depay, I've got Cherky, like you've seen, but I've also got ex-Celtic players, Jason Denayer and Moussa Dembele, who are both in Saudi Arabia at the moment, and the main reason for owning them is the collection bonus. Oh, Bruno Guimaraes is another midfielder I want to bring in, actually. He will help me a lot. Yeah, if I get Bruno in from Lyon and Trippier in from Atleti, then I've got a little Newcastle bit there on the go. So yeah, Bruno is on my list as well. So 5 midfielders are there to be gotten. Maybe even Amin Gouiri. I'm a big fan of him. The card's never really that cheap and he's not that great, but maybe I'd bring him in. But this is just more like some individual players. Like, love Cherki, love Depay, 2 ex-Celts, and then Joki Anderson is a solid centre-back at Crystal Palace, who I've enjoyed following since Glasner's been in, certainly. So that's a little 5-card collection. And then just beneath that, I've got this Atletico Madrid thing on 4 cards, which needs a Trippier in it, or another All Black to get it up to 5 cards, which would get it to the magic 2% mark. And like you can see, there's not even that great pieces in here. But Saul at Seville and Trippier, if I got him in, that'd be 2 cards that would be getting this 2% extra bonus on this. And this is something that with classic cards, I think you have to be manicuring really well, because the top 2 collections I showed you here, Leipzig and Sociedad, are both on 3% bonus on top of their score for me having a collection of that club. But then Valencia, Lyon, Atletico Madrid, and Leverkusen still needs 2 more cards. I want them to get to 2%, and that just means all of the cards that are in this just have a little bit more like chemistry, or they're helping each other out a little bit more, and it helps me just make decisions a lot easier when it comes to talent ID, because like I was mentioning to you before, we look at my midfield and straight away I'm thinking, right, well, what midfielders could I get? And the amount of choice that's out there is absolutely massive, and there's plenty of great choices. But when I see that Bruno Guimaraes in the Lyon collection, when I see those 3 Sociedad midfielders, and when I see Dominic Szoboszlai at Liverpool still in that Leipzig collection, not yet at my club, I think fantastic. They fit the bill. They'll get an extra 3% bonus that they would have had versus another guy that's basically the exact same but isn't in any of my collections. And then I'm just further building in a difference maker between me and the rest of the field, so that for some of these guys that aren't meta cards, when they do go off, or even when they do a good enough score, I'm getting every additional point for it I possibly can, because the leaderboards always are, and they're going to be even more tightly congested. And these difference makers will be the difference between 52nd and 46th. And that could be a tier 4 to a tier 3, or, that kind of thing happens as well. So that's something that I've been very outwardly vocal about in terms of this off-season, this handover period, that do not sleep on the collection bonus. And again, I'm not going to go through all my collections here, so this is not a collection video. But if I could use one more example, you've obviously seen the Celtic one a little bit there. But even if there was something out of region, and you just found, like, Kawasaki went on a mad dominant period of winning the J League all the time, and they had so many real smasher cards, and a lot of them were young, up-and-coming, exciting talents. Mickey Yaman maybe isn't that, but he's moved to MLS now and became a way more useful card for me. Although he doesn't score as well as he did in Japan, so now I'm not actually sure if that's the case. Maybe it'd be better for me in the same region as Celtic, but that's by the by. But we've also got Eo Tanaka, we've also got Mitoma, and we've also got Rio Hitate. So only 4 cards in this, so there's a wee bit of first owner bonus, of course, going into the mix with the Tanaka. But 4 cards to get 2% isn't that hard, and if you're really good at picking a team, picking a vintage of a team, a good year, even buying them secondary market, as you've seen with the Valencia one, and I've done with the Lyon one, getting to 2% isn't that big of a hurdle. And I do think that it's something that will help me out here, bridge that gap, because for goalkeeper, it's maybe not as relevant, but for defence and mid, for all the positions, really, like, I don't have that many guys that are really that different to a lot of other guys that are out there, and yeah, like maybe one time my guy scores 75, your guy scores 72, that puts me 3 points ahead, but I'm looking for every margin, I'm looking for every position of gain I possibly can. So my guy scoring 75, turning that into an 84 point score with like a 13% bonus is the kind of thing I'm after, because this is going to be a do or die division where the prize pools are really lean. The top 25% will get boxes that have essence in it, which is nice, of course, but there's not that many spaces where cards are actually paid out. And I hear a lot of Sorare managers then jumping from this and having a look at the league specific competitions, which, because I've got 2 La Liga keepers and 2 Bundesliga keepers, I can just about get away with thinking about maybe playing 2 La Liga teams with some of the players I've got and being upwardly competitive. Maybe I could be a little bit more mobile there. Same thing, of course, maybe could be true for the Bundesliga, but just based on my individual, like, actual roster that I've got there now, I don't have as big of a complement of strength in the Bundesliga as I do in La Liga. So I think with my 4 goalkeepers, it's going to result in me doing something very similar to what I was explaining on a stream recently that I'm probably going to do with my super rares. And I might just go for a 2-and-2 policy. Rather than with my 4 goalkeepers, picking teams 1 to 3, making them as strong as possible in Champion, and then using 1 in La Liga or 1 in Bundesliga as a little bit of an aftermath, a secondary thought kind of thing, is I might go for 2 teams in La Liga and 2 teams in Champion. I do have the option to maybe do 2 teams in La Liga and 2 teams in the Bundesliga. But if we actually look at the Bundesliga shaking here, how far away would I be from being competitive? I think it would be quite far. I've got 1.5 goalkeepers, and the one that's certain is going to be towards the bottom end of the table. The 3 defenders I've got, like, the L5 is going to tell you all you need to know. Like, Juranovic can do that for you, like, which is whatever, hardly useful at all. Jens, when he's fit, at Wolfsburg, by the way, he's pretty fine. You know, that this guy kind of works for the most part. He's a team 3, maybe a team 2 guy on a desperate day. But Frimpong, the amount of rotation that was at Leverkusen towards the back end of the season was so counterproductive. So this is a guy that's really hard to forecast on relying upon all season long, although he can deliver the scores that we need. So defence is rather weak. No real concrete there. Olmo probably leaves. Goretzka's a huge question mark. We're only looking at Haidara and Wirtz as real certainty here. Maybe Leimer comes into that. And again, with only 1 present striker at the moment, there's not really more than 1 team here for me. So personally, that's something I'd maybe lean away from. Whereas in La Liga, Killison, maybe I feel a bit more confident in than Vasilj. And Oblak, I think, is going to have one of his best SO5 years this year at Athletic. And really between the 3 Sociedad guys here, Pacheco, Traore and Lenormand, I think I've got 3 definite starters in La Liga. Let's see what happens with Starfelt and Galan and whatever. But for the 2 goalkeepers, as long as Sociedad are playing, which is the La Liga competition we're thinking about here, that's almost a given at this point. Defence is fine and works no problem at all. Midfield is maybe where we've got a little bit lacking. Parejo can be a boss, can be a bit of an OG GOAT, but with age, those 75 plus scores seem to be becoming a bit more rarer. We've also got a lot of faith in Saul. But outside of that, we're asking for Ferran Torres to break into the Barca team. We're asking for Zakarian to break into the Sociedad team, which could happen, but we need to wait and see. Same with Turientes as well. So the midfield has again got a bit of a soft centre. But up front, got plenty of options as it stands now. Again, let's not think about Depay, but all the Sociedad guys. So I don't think I'm league specific. Like, I don't think I'm that strong at the moment. And I think that with a lot of my projected purchases I'm going to go for, that's probably not going to change. Because with these 4 goalkeepers, some of the names that have featured in defence already maybe could make it into Team 1 once in a while. But I really do think Robertson, Guardiola, Angelino are going to monopolise my Team 1 and 2. Which between Serie A and the Premier League doesn't help La Liga or Bundesliga. So I'm kind of maybe got my hands tied behind my back for that decision-making process already. In the midfield, it's maybe the same. But I've got a lot of question marks that we've mentioned already in the video around a few of these. But even like in Nkunku, if he was like my suspected guy to break out, he's in the Prem. If I got Bruno, he's in the Prem. If I got Soboslai, he's in the Prem. And again, we spoke about it enough already. So I'm relying upon the different regions and maybe some players transferring. Like if Matt O'Reilly leaves Celtic and goes to Juventus, I think he'll do fantastic. But that'll be then 2 champion mids on really high XP that would come into the reckoning for this as well. So still a long time to go in the transfer window. That maybe organically my own club can, you know, replenish the ranks or really upgrade the position. And in attack, we've already mentioned, I'm really happy to go out and try and win cards this year. And the main strategy with this for me, for the classic competition, has to be winning cards to either get into an in-season competition quickly or to win cards to sell them. Now, I don't think looking at that strength of squad I've got, I can realistically say to myself, I'm going to win enough good enough in-season cards quick enough where I can get into the in-season competition and make a splash and make a difference and try and win some of the money on this prize pool, or maybe even the La Liga. Maybe La Liga would be a little bit easier potentially, but again, I don't look at this and think, oh yeah, I can make that happen within the first month or 2 of the season with a definite enough conviction where I would chase out and do it, which then means I think my route to goal is going to be capturing tier 3s and such as regularly as I can and turning them into the market, into the in-season market, where managers will be picking them up for their second team, for their third team, for the quality of player that I'm likely to be picking up as rewards for players that will be buying for the in-season. Now, this is a totally different strategy to what I'm doing with my Celtic cards, where I've got a totally different standing and position and whatever. And it's a completely different strategy to what I'll be doing in Challengers and maybe even under 23 as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. On screen and now some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. All those other strategies I spoke about, there will be videos in the future as well. Get into the comment section and let me know what you think about all this. Stay out of trouble, and I'll catch you on the next one.